I died at 35 in a hospital bed, my kidneys failing after years of working 3 jobs to support my husband's business ventures. My husband David wasn't there. He was at his other home, with his other wife and their 3 children, the family I didn't know existed until a woman showed up at my funeral claiming to be his widow. My name is Lisa Park, and I spent 12 years believing I was building a future with the man I loved. I worked myself to exhaustion, gave up my dreams, sold my mother's house to fund his failed startups, and took out loans in my name for his investments that never materialized. All while he told me we couldn't have children yet, that we needed to be financially stable first, that my sacrifice now would pay off later. There was no later. There was only the other family he'd started 10 years ago, the children he'd already had, the life he'd already built with someone else while I funded it all. When I opened my eyes again, I was 23, standing in a coffee shop on what I now recognized as my first date with David Chun. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the seat across from me with that charming smile I'd once found irresistible. Traffic was insane. In my previous life, I'd accepted this excuse without question. Over 12 years, I'd accept hundreds more: late nights at the office, weekend business trips, unexplained absences. I'd believed every word because I'd loved him completely. This time, I looked at David Chun and saw him clearly. A handsome liar who was already building the web that would trap me. "Actually, I can't stay," I said, standing up. "I just remembered I have somewhere else to be." David's smile faltered. "What?" "But we just..." "I'm not interested." "Sorry." I walked out, leaving him sitting there confused. In my previous timeline, this date had been the beginning of everything. A whirlwind romance, a quick engagement, a wedding within 6 months. This time, it was just a near miss. Over the next week, David tried persistently to contact me. Calls, texts showing up at my workplace. In my previous life, I'd found his pursuit romantic and flattering. This time, I recognized it for what it was. The behavior of someone who'd identified a target and wouldn't give up easily. I blocked his number after the 3rd day. But David was clever. He started showing up at places I frequented. The gym, my favorite lunch spot, even my apartment building. Always with a reason, always seeming coincidental. "Lisa, what a surprise seeing you here," he said one afternoon at the grocery store near my home, his cart conspicuously empty. "Is it? You live across town?" "I was visiting a friend nearby." The lie came smoothly. "Look, I know I came on too strong before. I was just really excited to meet you. Can we start over? Just coffee as friends." In my previous life, this moment had been when I'd given him a second chance, charmed by his persistence and apparent sincerity. "No," I said simply. "I'm not interested in coffee or friendship. Please stop following me." "Following you? I'm not. You've shown up at my gym, my office, and now a grocery store nowhere near your home. That's following. Stop." I walked away, but I could feel his eyes on my back, calculating his next move. The next day, a woman I didn't recognize approached me at work. "Are you Lisa Park?" "Yes. I'm Jennifer Wu. I need to talk to you about David Chun." My blood ran cold. Jennifer Wu had been David's high school girlfriend, the one he'd described as crazy and obsessive in our previous timeline. I'd believed him then, never questioning why she'd supposedly been so unhinged. What about him? "He's dangerous." "Not physically, but..." Jennifer looked around nervously. "Can we talk somewhere private?" We went to a nearby park. Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed me a folder of screenshots. David and I dated for 3 years. During that time, he convinced me to co-sign loans for his business, to invest my savings in his projects, to work multiple jobs to support us while he built his empire. I was completely in love with him, willing to do anything. What happened? I found out he was seeing someone else. Had been for over a year. When I confronted him, he turned it around on me, said I was jealous and controlling, that he'd never promised exclusivity, that I was ruining his life with my accusations. He got mutual friends to back him up, made me look crazy. "Did you get your money back?" Jennifer laughed bitterly. "No. The loans were in my name. The investments were gone. I spent 5 years paying off debt from his business ventures. And the whole time, He was building a new relationship with someone else, probably doing the same thing to her. Why are you telling me this? Because I saw him following you. I recognized that look. The intense pursuit, the manufactured coincidences. That's how he started with me too. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't warn you. I looked at the screenshots, loan documents, chat logs, photos of David with another woman that were dated during his relationship with Jennifer. Thank you, I said quietly. I already turned him down, but this confirms I made the right choice. Good. Because he won't stop easily. When he identifies a target, and that's what you are to him, a target, he doesn't give up until he either succeeds or finds someone easier. After Jennifer left, I sat in the park processing this information. In my previous life, I'd never known about Jennifer except as a crazy ex. I'd never questioned David's victim narrative or wondered what had really happened. Now I understood. I'd been the next Jennifer. And after me, there would be another woman, and another. David's pattern was clear. Find someone with resources, charm them, drain them, move on. This time, I was breaking the pattern. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my friend Michelle, who'd introduced me to David in my previous timeline. Lisa, David asked me about you again. He seems really interested. I know you said you weren't feeling it, but maybe you should give him another chance? He's successful, handsome, really charming. Michelle, has David ever asked you for money? What? No. Why would he? Has he mentioned any business ventures he's working on? Any investments he needs funding for? Well, he did mention something about a tech startup, but that's normal. Don't invest anything. Don't co-sign anything. Don't give him access to your finances in any way. Lisa, you're being paranoid. I'm being careful. And if you're smart, you will be too. Michelle was offended and we didn't speak for several months. But 6 months later, she called me crying. You were right. David asked me to invest in his startup. I said no because of what you said, but my friend Karen said yes. She gave him $50,000. Now he's disappeared, won't return her calls, and the company doesn't exist. I'm sorry. How did you know? I talked to someone he did the same thing to before. He has a pattern. I should have listened to you. Karen is devastated. After we hung up, I felt a deep sadness. I'd saved myself this time, but David was still out there, still running his con, still destroying women's financial futures while playing the charming entrepreneur. In my previous timeline, after 12 years of this, I'd died exhausted and broke while he lived comfortably with his real family. This time I'd escaped, but how many other women wouldn't? I called Jennifer Wu. I want to help you stop him. Properly this time. Together, we started documenting David's pattern. Jennifer found 3 other women he'd scammed after her. I helped track down 2 more. Each woman had the same story. Intense pursuit, quick relationship, requests for financial help that escalated over time, eventual discovery of another woman, emotional manipulation when confronted. With 6 victims documented, we went to a lawyer specializing in fraud cases. This is systematic financial exploitation, the lawyer said after reviewing our evidence. The problem is that most of it appears to be relationship-based, loans between romantic partners, gifts, investments that failed. It's hard to prosecute. But it's a pattern, Jennifer argued. He's deliberately targeting women and draining their resources. I understand. But proving criminal intent requires more than a pattern. We'd need evidence that he deliberately misrepresented his businesses as legitimate when he knew they weren't. That he planned to take the money without providing what he promised. What about the fact that he's still married? I asked. If he's proposing to women while married, that's fraud, right? Everyone turned to look at me. What do you mean he's still married? Jennifer asked. I realized I'd spoken from knowledge of my previous timeline. Information I shouldn't have yet. I mean, if he is. Has anyone checked? The lawyer made some calls. 2 days later, she called us back. David Chun is married. Has been for 8 years. Wife's name is Susan Chin. They have 2 children. They own a house together in the suburbs. Jennifer went pale. He was married when he was with me? Yes. And based on the timeline, he was married when he was with all of you. This was earlier than my previous timeline. David must have started his double life younger than I'd realized. This changes things, the lawyer said. If he proposed to any of you while married, that's fraud. If he took money claiming you were building a future together, when he was already married to someone else, that's fraud. He proposed to me. One of the other women, Rachel, said quietly. We were engaged for 2 years. He kept postponing the wedding, saying we needed to be financially stable first. I funded 3 of his businesses during that time. I'll need all the documentation you have, the lawyer said. Engagement photos, texts where he discussed marriage, loan documents, everything. Over the next month, we built a case. The lawyer filed civil suits on behalf of all 6 women, seeking repayment of the funds David had fraudulently obtained while misrepresenting his marital status and business intentions. David's response was to disappear. He stopped answering his phone, closed his social media accounts, and seemed to vanish. But the lawyer had his home address, the one with Susan and the children. When served with papers, Susan Chin called me directly. You're the woman suing my husband? I'm one of them. I don't understand. David said these were all business relationships that went bad, that you're all vindictive ex-partners trying to destroy him. Did he tell you he proposed to Rachel while married to you? Did he tell you he took over $200,000 from 6 different women claiming he was building a future with them? Silence. I'm sorry, I said more gently. I know this must be horrible to hear. But your husband has been systematically targeting women, convincing them to fund his lifestyle and his businesses, while lying about his marital status and intentions. I thought, Susan's voice broke. I thought he was working late, building his career. He said the businesses would pay off eventually, that we just needed to be patient. The businesses never existed. The money went to maintaining your household and his lifestyle, while he pursued other women to fund the next phase. How do you know all this? Because I lived it for 12 years in another life, I thought. Because I started asking questions instead of believing his answers. Susan filed for divorce within the week. She also agreed to cooperate with our civil case, providing financial records that showed David had no legitimate business income, that their household had been funded by a series of investments from various women, and that he'd maintained this pattern for at least a decade. The civil case took 2 years. During that time, I rebuilt my own life, the one I'd abandoned in my previous timeline to support David. I finished my degree in graphic design that I'd dropped out of before. I started freelancing, building a client base and a portfolio. I moved into a small apartment that was entirely mine, funded by work I'd done myself. Most importantly, I learned to recognize red flags I'd ignored before. Love bombing, financial requests early in relationships, inconsistencies in stories, isolation from friends and family, manipulation through guilt. I started a blog documenting my experience, not naming David specifically, but describing the pattern of financial exploitation in romantic relationships. Other women reached out with similar stories. Some were still trapped in relationships like my first one with David. Others had escaped, but were dealing with the financial aftermath. I created a support group, then a nonprofit organization focused on financial education for women and resources for those escaping exploitative relationships. By the time the civil case concluded, David was ordered to pay restitution to all 6 women, though actually collecting the money would be another battle. I'd built something meaningful from my pain. One afternoon, I was at a coffee shop working on content for the nonprofit when someone sat down across from me. You're Lisa Park. I looked up to find a man I didn't recognize. Yes. I'm Marcus Kim. I'm a journalist working on a story about relationship fraud. And your case against David Chin is one of the most well-documented examples I've found. I'm not interested in publicity. I understand. But the patterns you've documented, the resources you've created, they could help a lot of people if they had wider exposure. I'm not looking to sensationalize your story. I want to help prevent what happened to you from happening to others. I studied Marcus carefully. He seemed genuine, professional, nothing like David's superficial charm. I'll think about it. Fair enough. Here's my card. Call me if you change your mind. After he left, I sat thinking about my previous life, about dying alone and broke, having sacrificed everything for a man who'd been using me the entire time. About the other women who were probably experiencing the same thing right now. I called Marcus back the next day. The article came out 3 months later in a major national publication. It didn't focus on David specifically. He was one example among many. Instead, it examined the pattern of financial exploitation in relationships, how it differs from obvious fraud, why victims often don't recognize what's happening until it's too late. The article mentioned my nonprofit and the resources we'd created. Within a week, our website traffic increased by 10,000%. Women reached out from across the country with their own stories. Some were still trapped. We connected them with legal resources and financial counselors. Some had escaped but were drowning in debt. We helped them understand their options and rights. And some were in the early stages, experiencing the red flags but not sure whether to trust their instincts. Those were the most important. Those were the ones we could help escape before years of exploitation. 5 years after my rebirth, I was 33. 2 years younger than I'd been when I died in my previous timeline. My nonprofit had helped over 3,000 women. My blog had a readership in the hundreds of thousands. I'd published a book about financial abuse that became a resource for therapists and lawyers working with victims. I'd built a life I was proud of, one focused on preventing others from experiencing what I'd been through. I was at a fundraiser for the nonprofit when Marcus Kim found me. "You've done something remarkable here," he said, looking around at the crowded venue. "When I interviewed you 5 years ago, you had a website and a support group. Now you're a nationally recognized organization." I had help. A lot of people believed in what we were doing. Still, it takes a special kind of determination to turn personal trauma into meaningful change. I couldn't save myself in time, but I could save others. Marcus looked at me curiously. "What do you mean in time?" I'd slipped. Spoken from my previous timeline's experience again. I mean, by the time I realized what David was doing, I'd already lost years and resources. I couldn't get that back. But I could use what I'd learned to help others recognize the pattern earlier. Makes sense. Marcus paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I might not answer." "Have you dated anyone since David?" The article was 5 years ago. That's a long time to be alone because of what one person did. "I haven't been alone. I've been building something that matters." "That's not the same thing." "No, it's not. But it's what I needed to do." The truth was, I'd been so focused on preventing other women from experiencing what I had that I'd forgotten to actually live my own life. I'd chosen my work over personal relationships, convinced that building the nonprofit was more important than building personal happiness. "You deserve both," Marcus said quietly. "The meaningful work and the personal happiness. They're not mutually exclusive." "Is this your way of asking me out?" "Yes. But I understand if you're not interested." I just thought, after 5 years of professional respect and admiration, maybe it was worth asking. I thought about my previous life, where I'd jumped into a relationship without caution and paid the price. Then I thought about this life, where I'd been so cautious I'd avoided relationships entirely. Maybe there was a middle ground. "Dinner," I said. "Not a date. Just dinner with someone I respect who happens to find me interesting." Marcus smiled. "I'll take it." We had dinner the following week. Then coffee. Then a walk through the park. Slowly, carefully, I let Marcus into my life. Not as a whirlwind romance, but as a genuine connection built on mutual respect and honest communication. He never asked me for money. Never pressed me to move faster than I was comfortable with. Never tried to isolate me from friends, or make me feel guilty for prioritizing my work. He was in every way the opposite of David Chin. 6 months into dating Marcus, I got a call from Jennifer Wu. "You're not going to believe this. David was arrested." "For what?" "Wire fraud. Turns out after our civil case, he moved to another state and started the whole thing over again. But one of the women he targeted was an FBI agent working undercover on an unrelated case. She recognized the pattern and brought in her team." "Is he going to prison?" "If the charges stick, yes. They have documented cases from at least 15 women across 3 states. It's not just civil fraud anymore. It's criminal. After we hung up, I sat with this information. Part of me felt satisfaction. David would finally face consequences that actually mattered. But another part of me felt sad for all the women who'd come after us, who'd experience what we had because we couldn't stop him in time. You okay? Marcus asked, finding me on the couch looking contemplative. Just thinking about paths not taken. In another life, I could have been victim number 15 instead of victim 6. Or I could have never been a victim at all if I'd made different choices earlier. You can't think like that. You made the choices you made with the information you had. But I didn't, I thought. I made different choices because I had information from a life I'd already lived. What would you have done differently? Marcus asked. If you could go back to that first date with David, knowing everything you know now. I'd walk away immediately. No second chances, no benefit of the doubt. Just a clean break before he could sink his hooks in. That's what you did this time though. You broke the pattern early. This time, yes. But it took me 12 years to learn the lesson. Marcus looked at me strangely. What do you mean 12 years? Your relationship with David only lasted a few months before you started asking questions. I'd slipped again. Spoken from my previous timeline. I mean, it took 12 years for all 6 women combined. Spread across that time. Each of us giving him years before we figured it out. That makes more sense. Marcus pulled me close. I'm glad you figured it out when you did. Both for yourself and for all the women you've helped since. 7 years after my rebirth, I was 35, the age I'd died in my previous timeline. Instead of lying in a hospital bed with kidney failure, I was standing on a stage accepting an award for the nonprofit's work. This organization exists because I learned the hard way that love and exploitation can wear the same face. I said in my acceptance speech. I spent years funding someone else's life while sacrificing my own future. I'm one of the lucky ones. I got out with just financial damage. But I know women who lost more. Who lost their health, their families, their sense of self. In the audience, I saw faces I recognized. Jennifer Wu, now a financial counselor specializing in fraud recovery. Rachel, who'd rebuilt her credit and started her own business. Susan Chun, David's ex-wife, who'd become an advocate for women navigating divorce from financially abusive partners. And Marcus, who'd supported my work without ever trying to take credit or control it. The nonprofit isn't about revenge or even justice, though those things matter. It's about information and resources. It's about helping women recognize the warning signs early. It's about building economic independence that can't be stolen by someone claiming to love you. After the ceremony, Susan approached me. I wanted to thank you, she said. If you hadn't started asking questions, if you hadn't documented the pattern, I might still be living that lie. My children would have grown up watching their father manipulate and exploit people while pretending to be a devoted family man. How are your kids? They're angry, confused, in therapy, but they're also learning important lessons about honesty and integrity because they've seen what happens when those things are absent. And you? I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I have a job I love, full custody, and a life that's entirely my own. No one can take that from me because it's not built on someone else's lies. That evening, Marcus and I walked home through the city streets. You never told me how you really knew, he said suddenly. Knew what? About David. That first date, you said you just weren't interested. But it was more than that. You knew he was dangerous. Ha, I could lie. Make up something about intuition or research. But after 7 years with Marcus, I was tired of holding this secret. If I told you something impossible, would you believe me? Try me. We sat on a bench in the park, and I told him everything. About my previous life, about the 12 years with David, about dying at 35 from the accumulated damage of working myself to death for someone who'd been using me the entire time. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. That's quite a story. You think I'm crazy? No. I think you've lived through something that gave you information you shouldn't have had. And you used it to save yourself and help others. Whether it was actually a previous life or some kind of extraordinary intuition or something else entirely, the results are the same. You changed your fate and helped thousands of other women change theirs. You don't believe me? I believe that something happened to you that gave you knowledge you shouldn't have had. I believe you used that knowledge for good. Does the mechanism matter? I thought about that. I guess not. What matters is that you're here now, healthy and happy, doing work that saves lives. Whether you learned those lessons in a previous life or through some other means, you learned them. That's what counts. We walked home in comfortable silence, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret I'd been carrying no longer felt like a burden. 10 years after my rebirth, Marcus and I got married. It was nothing like my previous wedding to David. No rush, no pressure, no hidden agendas. Just two people who'd built genuine partnership over years of honest communication. At the reception, Jennifer Wu gave a toast. I met Lisa after she'd just dodged a bullet named David Chen. I was the bullet that hadn't dodged in time, still dealing with the damage. Together, we decided to build something that would help other women avoid the same fate. 10 years later, our nonprofit has helped over 10,000 women. But more than that, Lisa has built a life that proves you can recover from exploitation and build something beautiful from the ruins. The organization continued to grow. We expanded to offer financial literacy programs, legal resources, therapeutic support, and job training for women escaping economically abusive relationships. David Chen served 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud. When he was released, he was a registered financial offender, required to disclose his conviction to any potential business or romantic partners. His pattern was broken, his ability to exploit destroyed by the public record of his crimes. 12 years after my rebirth, the length of my previous marriage to David, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. In my previous timeline, this would have been close to my death. Instead, I was healthy, successful, in a genuine partnership with someone who valued me. You okay? Marcus asked, finding me staring at my reflection, just thinking about alternate timelines. The one where you married David? Yes. In that life, I'd be dead or dying right now. Used up, broken, discarded. But you're not. You're here, healthy, happy, doing work that matters. You changed your fate. I got lucky. I got a second chance that most people don't get. Maybe. Or maybe you just trusted your instincts when they told you something was wrong. Either way, you saved yourself and helped thousands of others do the same. Marcus was right. Whether I'd been literally reborn with memories of a previous timeline, or had simply recognized warning signs others missed, the result was the same. I'd chosen myself over exploitation, built something meaningful from potential tragedy, and created a future that was entirely my own. David Chen had wanted to use me to fund his double life. In my previous timeline, he'd succeeded, draining me of resources, health, and years until I died, never knowing I'd been just one of many. This time, I'd walked away from that first date and never looked back. I'd built a life that was so different from my previous one that sometimes it felt like I really was a different person entirely. Maybe that was the real lesson of rebirth. Not that you got to literally relive your life with perfect knowledge, but that every day you could choose to be someone different than you'd been before. To recognize patterns that would hurt you and walk away. To build something better from what you'd learned. I'd sacrificed for my husband, but he'd used me and had another family. Reborn, I'd changed my fate. Not through revenge or justice, though those had played their roles, but through the simple, radical act of choosing myself first. Of building economic independence, of helping other women recognize the warning signs, and escape before years of exploitation took everything from them. That was the real power of a second chance. Not in undoing the past, but in using its lessons to build a completely different future. And mine was everything I'd never had the courage to dream of in my previous life.